Well, good evening and welcome to Yada Yahowah. Looking forward to talking about Yowm Kipurym this evening, Sunday at sunset. We will begin the celebration of Yowm Kipurym. 5 days later, of course, is Sukkah. So, Kirk and Dee, let's chat a little bit about Yowm Kipurym and what it means. It is kind of a melancholy experience for me. We've talked about Torah is my life. It is our lives. It is all consuming. We have been in a constant celebration and observation of Torah now for 22 years, with 10 years remaining, and that is because the purpose of Torah is really fundamentally to herald Yahweh and Dowd's return, and to speak specifically about Kipurym, because this is the seventh and last chance that Yahuwdym will have to reconcile their relationship with Yahweh. Any Yisraelite or Yahud, of course, any Goy as well, that has not resolved their relationship with Yahweh, consistent with the plan that he has outlined through the 5 conditions of the covenant and the 7 invitations to meet each year. Well, if you miss Kipurym in your 6,000 Yah, which is exactly 10 years from today, then it is all over. And for those who say, well, I've got 10 years, that's a long time, I can continue to do what I'm doing, and we'll just see how this thing all progresses over time. I have some good news and some bad news for you. The good news is that you give up nothing worthwhile and you gain everything valuable by forming a relationship with Yahweh. So your only regret in doing this tonight versus doing it 10 years from now is that you will regret that you didn't do it 10 years ago. That's how much better life is with Yah. And the second is that for Yahuwdym, it's apparent that 2 out of every 3, some 10 million Jews are going to die. Yeah, between now and Kipurym and year 6,000 Yah, which is the 120th Yobel. That is 2033 on our calendar. And that's good news because by comparison, about 90% or more of gowym aren't going to make it to this day. And it's not going to be God lashing out or doing anything. This is just what we're going to do to ourselves. We have set the world on a course for world war. And we have set Israel on the course of being, Neville Chamberlain. Here is, and it is particularly sad. You had Netanyahu, who gives a speech at the UN yesterday, talking about how peace with Saudi Arabia is essentially inevitable and it's going to happen in the first quarter of next year. Why you would play into a psychopath's hands, I just don't know. The smarter play would have been to say, yes, there is discussion of normalized relations with Saudi Arabia, which would be a good thing. We do not view Saudi Arabia as our enemy, and we can see, as can they, that there would be innumerable advantages in us working together, mutual defense and also in technology and investments. So we would certainly encourage normalized relationships with any of our neighbors, and particularly with Saudi Arabia. However, there is lots of talk about what Israel will be asked to give up, and that is an inappropriate request. Saudi Arabia, if they wish to form a relationship with it, that's wonderful, but we'll do so only on a mutually beneficial basis, and we won't be dictated to in terms of our survival. So, Saudi Arabia has lots of land and lots of money. If they feel compelled that they want to take care of the fake Estonians, if that is MBS's goal in life, then he can create a city in Western Arabia and put them all there and see how well they behave. That's his choice,
Yes.
not ours. The reason I'm a bit melancholy on Yom Kipurym is that it is my retirement party. I will have that point. I will have invested 32 years in this endeavor, calling Yisraelites and Yahuwdym home to Dowd and to Yahowah. When Dowd arrives, my job will be complete because my mission has been to identify who Dowd is and what he accomplished. The fact is that he is the Messiah. The fact is that he is the Son of God. The fact is he is the returning king. The fact is he's also the Passover lamb. The term that Yahweh uses for that is Zeroah. Dowd is all of these things. He is God's chosen one, his firstborn. And you cannot have a discussion of Kipurym without a discussion of Dowd, because Dowd is Kipurym.
Right.
It's not just that Dowd is responsible for all 7 of the Moed Mikre, because God doesn't do anything alone. And you can be assured that the single most important fulfillments in human history, which are the 7 fulfillments of the Moed Mikre, Yahweh would not do independently, but chose to do with his beloved son, Dowd, who volunteered for this mission as well. But you see, Kipurym for Yahweh and for Dowd is a very different experience than was the fulfillment of the first 4 Moed Mikre. The first 4 Moed Mikre was a hellish experience for Dowd, quite literally. His corporeal body in 33 CE, the Romans ripped the skin off and then nailed him to an upright pillar to torture him to death. It was the most excruciating 24 hours that any human had ever experienced. And that was the easy part, because the following day, actually starting that evening, which is the following day, on Matzah, his soul accepted the guilt of the covenant family of Yisra'el. And he carried that guilt with him into Sheol, where he had deposited it, which is the ideal place for our guilt to vanish, because it is a lightless realm where nothing escapes.
Y'all can't go there.
And yes, so he did this for us, celebrating firstborn children, Bikurim, as Yahweh's firstborn, Bikur, and then was more enriched and empowered than anyone in human history on the promise of 7 on Shabuah, 7 sevens later. This is what he did for us in year 4,000 Yah, and it makes it possible for us to serve as heralds for Dowd's return with Yahweh on Yom Kipurym, the Day of Reconciliations. But this day is a very different experience for Dowd. He is not proving anything to anybody at this point. He is the Savior of all who will survive Yahweh's return. He is the King for all eternity. He will never have a coup against him again. No one will ever speak against him again. No one will ever question him again. He paid the price to earn everyone's respect that will look up to Yahweh and Dowd on that day, Yom Kipurym, October 2nd, 6:22 p.m. as the sun sets in Jerusalem. For him, it is his triumphant return. He is coming back with his Father, side by side. He will be as brilliant as the sun when he returns. This is a celebration for him. Everything he wrote about everything he did was for this day. And on this day, his first job will be to serve, to fulfill the Torah. And the Torah on Yowm Kipurym has the high priest, which Dowd will be dressed as he returns, anoint the Kipur, the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant, which will be restored and will be placed inside of Yahweh's home, which will be reestablished at this very second, likely built out of light. And once Dowd anoints the mercy seat, the Kipur of the Ark of the Covenant, then he and his father can celebrate the ultimate family reunion.
Mm-hmm.
Now you might say, so, well, isn't that going to be grand? Why are you going to be melancholy? Because I'm going to tell you that there's only going to be a score of people who aren't crying their eyes out on this day. Even my wife, who is, been on this journey with me now for, 12 years. Every time we talk about it, she cries. It's going to be impossible for any Yehud not to cry as they see Dowd return and recognize he fulfilled Passover. He's the one that was pierced and that Jews for 2,000 years disregarded. He made the ultimate sacrifice for his people to live and to be exonerated, and for a better part of 2,000 years, not a single Jew acknowledged it. And so the tears that will be shed for having done that to the Son of God, their Messiah, their Savior and King, a very sad experience initially, and it will warm up to being, the day that Yahweh has looked forward to more than any other.
Yeah.
So why again melancholy? Because I'm done. I've had a purpose for the last 32 years. It's been the greatest joy of my life to serve as Dowd's herald, to call Yisra'el and Yahuwdym home so that they take advantage of this seventh and last opportunity to reconcile their relationship with Yahweh. And this is it. Yes, I will be thrilled with the opportunity to camp out with Yah for all eternity, beginning with Sukkah. And we'll love to see how he's going to redecorate the place. And I'm sure there's going to be a degree of satisfaction that, I'm sure I could have done better, but all in all, I think I've done a pretty darn good job over the past 22 years. I don't expect to lighten up. And has made it pretty clear that he's going to be pleased with the end result. So, I'm not going to have any regrets, but, if I can be personal a bit, it's a melancholy experience. This is my retirement.
Right.
But it's also going to be a bit melancholy knowing that there's no one left to save. There's no one left to awaken. If you survive this day, you will be part of Yahweh's covenant family. You're going to have the Torah placed inside of you. You're going to know Yah, love Yah. There will be no one else after those who gather on this day.
Right.
So this is, I want to also share that there is, leading up to this day, it is obvious from reading what the prophets have to say that I'm going to be Eliah's sidekick for 3 years, arriving in Pesach and 2030. It's going to be a hellish time in Yisra'el. 2 weeks before we arrive, a corporeal manifestation of Hasatan is going to arrive. And if I look at how progressives are responding to judicial reform and besmirching their elected government in New York while Netanyahu is there, and I read almost everything the Haredim have to say. I just want to vomit. How disgusting it is, and it's going to get far worse. Trusting MBS is going to prove nearly fatal for Israel.
Right.
So, having experienced the last 3 years roasting rabbis, you're going to go in and say, "Good grief, I'm glad that's over." But Yahweh's going to have two witnesses in Jerusalem to combat all of the lies that have been spoken before. So that is Kipurym. It is Dowd and Yahweh's return to reconcile the relationship with Yisra'el, and there will not be any religious Jews that survive this day. The chickens they twirl over their heads, they may survive it, but there won't be a single rabbi nor a single member of the Haredim sect. No religious Jews, no Christians, no Muslims, no Hindus, no progressives. It'll be a fairly small cross-section of people, because to be part of the covenant and to be there at this day, you'll have to have foregone religion and politics long before this day occurs. So be aware that this is, if you are among the majority of Israelis and are disgusted by the Haredim, then this might be a good time for you to become part of the covenant, because God's disgusted by them as well. And if you are a Yisraelite, cares about Yisra'el, and you are disgusted by the shrill anti-Israeli voices of the progressives and their vitriol, understand that Yahweh is disgusted by them too. So it might be a good time for you to become part of Yahweh's family. Last week we talked about the fact that there had been 7 opportunities where Yahweh has reached out and tried to resolve the conflict with humans. And this is the 7th. There will be an opportunity to rebel an 8th time, but there will be no 8th opportunity at reconciliation.
Right.
So if you guys want to add just your insights to and thoughts before we talk about what Yahweh specifically had to say about this day, it'd be a wonderful time to do it.
Well, I would like to ask something, if I may, Dee, unless you want to go first.
No,
I just had one question. Well, I just, we have Sukkah and 1,000 years, and perhaps we'll have some type of role in that. I mean, they are going to raise children and have babies and increase the population. So perhaps they might be an art teacher and Torah expert and Dee.
I do think we will have. Listen, Yahweh values work. I'm reading right now about the Garden of Dowd and how he worked that garden with Yahweh. Yahweh values work. Dowd fulfilled the Moed Mikre. That was absolutely work. This is something God values. So we will all be working throughout eternity. If you don't enjoy work, you're just not going to fit in. So we'll all have jobs. And listen, the last time things changed for me, I was assigned the job of exposing and condemning Islam. So it was quite a promotion to be invited to witness to Yahweh's prophetic testimony. So I'm certain we'll have enjoyable jobs, and it's not melancholy from that point of view. But imagine devoting 7 days a week, 10, 12, 14 hours a day, not just doing this, but doing it supercharged with Yahweh's spiritual assistance and empowerment. That's a pretty exciting thing to be doing, and it will end here at Kipurym. So there'll be. Listen, it even appears that two things seem to be evident. One is that Yahweh, over a period of time, and it may be weeks, is going to want to judge those that of those who have died or who have survived to this day and are not part of the covenant. There'll be one of two outcomes. Their souls will either be exterminated, so they cease, no penalty, no reward, or if they were among those who were overtly political and religious and led people away from Yahweh, for example, the Hashemers that won't even say his name, the black suitors, then they're going to be judged and condemned to an eternity in Sheol, which is convenient since they denied that the place even exists. And Yahweh has a track record of doing everything through individuals who are properly prepared to work with him in this regard. So there is a likelihood that we will be tasked with that mission. But we'll be well supported by Malak, so will. And listen, there is a sense of satisfaction of holding people accountable, so that those that they have abused have a sense of closure. And then I think from that point on, kings have the ability, by the very nature of kingship, to do what they want to do and to delegate that which they don't want to do. And so it is highly likely that Dowd is going to delegate. And so there's going to be people around him who are going to do the work that he really doesn't want to do. And he is such an inspiring and an amazing individual. Working for him will be a thrill. And I think that many of us who have devoted our energy to proclaiming who he is and what he's offering, what he has done for us, and proclaiming his return, are going to be among the people that he chooses to delegate tasks through. So there's the possibility we could be doing that too. But also just time is different as we transition beyond this point, because at least for those of us who will have chosen covenant prior to fulfillment of Towrah, which is likely going to take place in 2029 on the first day of the 7th month, while the rest of Israel is celebrating Yowm Kipurym. They're celebrating Rosh Hashanah. We'll be celebrating Towrah. There'll be a wonderful harvest. And so we're going to return as spiritual beings, and as a spiritual being, time is entirely relative. You can experience a moment for a million years, or you can experience a million years in a moment. So we will be able to take long vacations when we want to, and explore far-reaching galaxies and solar systems and planets and the like. So it's going to be a very different experience as we move forward. Yahweh is a 7-dimensional being. We are 3-dimensional beings stuck in the ordinary flow of time. The universe itself is 6 dimensions. With each step upward from 3 to 4, the increase in terms of freedom and capability and experience is infinite. And so we're looking at an infinity multiplied by infinity multiplied by infinity by infinity 4 times over to get from 3 to 7 dimensions. So it's going to be a really extraordinary experience, and we're inviting you, Yahweh is inviting you, Dowd is inviting you to attend.
Yes.
So did that something you would like to add, Dee, before we go on to the text as Yahweh described this day?
I would, actually. I wanted to touch on, I've heard some feedback about people feeling that perhaps what we're doing is more offensive to Jews by calling out the shenanigans than it is actually helpful for them. And I have to tell you, you're wrong. Like the chicken you brought up, they believe that this chicken is an atonement offering, and by doing so, they're actually rejecting the means to approach Yahweh that Yahweh designated that can save their life. It's important to call out this behavior. And the Messiah, the Lamb,
it's reprehensible. Yeah, it's reprehensible.
Right.
You know,
so
when a religious person tries to augment what God said with stupidity, then it would be irresponsible for us not to call it out. I mean, the ultimate stupidity. And listen, I have no compunction about pulling punches as it relates to rabbinical stupidity, but the rabbis have painted Kipurym as a day of sacrifice and of self-denial, and so their idea of how to celebrate the ultimate chance at reconciliation with Yahweh is to abase themselves, to deny themselves, and that's
we're trying to help, not hurt.
That's like a father saying, "All right, you want to re-enter this relationship. What I want you to do is harm yourself."
Right.
Yeah.
And the more you harm yourself, the more I'll respect you. It's repulsive.
It is.
So, if somebody thinks that we would be more successful if we talked nicely about rabbinical Judaism and didn't condemn it, that there'd be more listeners, then the hell with them. God is disgusted by religion. There will be no religious people of any kind that survive his Yom Kipurym return. None.
Right.
Not one. Not from any religion. And God is more disgusted by Judaism than any other.
Yes.
And so we might as well tell people the truth. That's the problem with religion, is religion offers people false hope.
Right.
And that's mean. That people deprive themselves of their money and of their freedoms, their opportunities, based on the false hope of liars.
Right.
Why wouldn't you? I'm just finished a long translation of Yirma'yah 23, and throughout it, there's only one thing. God's saying, "I hate Judaism with a passion."
Yep.
So it's something to keep in mind. No, this is what the Jews would call their high holy days, and they have completely inverted Yahweh's intent. The 2 times a year that Jews think they're being so damn holy by their observance of a Jewish holiday, they are completely wrong. They have taken Passover, which is 1 day, and they've made it 7 days by completely eliminating, and matzah is the essence of the 3-day celebration.
Yeah.
Passover without matzah is counterproductive.
Yeah.
Matzah by itself is wonderful.
Yeah, right.
But matzah, the purpose of matzah is to de-yeast the soul. This is the day that Dowd carried the guilt of his people, which is their religious rebellion and political rebellion against God, into Sheol. And so if you were to celebrate Passover and you skip over matzah, then your soul becomes immortal, but forever separated from Yahweh because you retain all your guilt.
Right.
It's a really, really horrible option. And that's precisely what Rabbinic Judaism does.
And
then on Yom Kipurym, which is the final chance at reconciliation, which every aspect of this is about this family reunion, they turn it into a time of abasement, of affliction. The antithesis of what God wants.
And let's not even talk about the money they make at the expense of Jews.
That's why they do it, sure.
Rabbis are the highest paid clergy in the world.
Right.
And it's just a money-grubbing, disgusting cult. And they deprive their people of every possible opportunity and control their lives. And God knows it, and he's going to hold them accountable. The very Sheol they deny is where they're going to spend
and we need
eternity.
To hear now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, they've actually put their people in a Sheol. Yeah. All right, then Yahweh declared the word, Debar, to Moshe, the one who draws out. Ak, which means exclusively. During the 10th of the 7th month is Yowm Kipurym. Ha-ze Yom Ha-Kipurym. Now, Jews will tell you, no, it's Yom Kippur. No, it isn't. Not according to Yahweh. It's his holiday. It's his invitation. He always writes it as Kipurym.
Plural.
I mean, everybody knows. What's the YM ending mean in Hebrew? Plural. So it's not the day of reconciliation. It's the day of reconciliations. Plural. Why is that the case? Several reasons. One is, this is the day that Yahweh tells us that he is going to reconcile his relationship with Yisra'el and Yahuwdym, but also that Yisra'el and Yahuwdym are going to be reunited. And there will be thousands of Yisraelites and gowym and Yahuwdym that are all going to be celebrating this family reunion. Reconciliations. This exists as a kodesh, set apart and special, mikra, invitation to be called out and meet, a time to read and recite, an opportunity to proclaim the name, a day to be welcomed, for you all to approach, la'atem. God has declared a very special day on your behalf. And so you, as a religious Jew, have so little regard for him that you say, oh, well, if God made this day for us, he must want us to abuse ourselves. This is the day to afflict ourselves. But is your God Satan? I mean, seriously.
No, it'd have to be.
That's
your thought.
So, and if God says that this day is special, and that this day is for you all to approach, that it is wouldn't you think that somebody would look up and say, mikra. It's from ma, or me, qarab. Qarab is one of the most common verbs in Hebrew. And either the ma or the me that precedes it's an interrogatory. In this case, it's my, preceding qarab, the verb. So it means to ponder the implications of qarab, which is to be invited, to be summoned. But the invitation is coming from God Almighty. You might want to pay attention. To read and recite, to meet and to be welcomed, and also to be called out, which means called away from religion and politics. That is qarab, and it is mikra in the singular. Oh, and by the way, what's the beginning of this? I recall Yahweh. If you're not willing to acknowledge Yahweh's name, which would be 100% of religious Jews for the past 2,000 years. If you're not willing to acknowledge Yahweh's name, to love Yahweh's name, to respect Yahweh's name, to speak and proclaim Yahweh's name as one would do on a mikra, then you're not going to be among those who will celebrate this day.
Right.
There is no one who does not know and use Yahweh's name who will spend eternity with God in heaven. 100% of those who will become part of the covenant family and enjoy an eternity camping out with Yahweh know and acknowledge Yahweh's name. And don't pretend that nobody knows how to pronounce it. 4 letters, all 4 are vowels.
Very easy.
There are countless Hebrew words with a yod, a hey, and a wah. And you're able to pronounce every one of them. Do you think that Jews are stumbling over how to say Torah?
No.
Well, where does the ah come from if it's not the hey? Where does the o come from if it's not the wah? You think Jews are having trouble saying shalom?
Nope.
Where does that o sound come from? Can somebody who speaks Hebrew not make the connection when God says, I am who I am? And
Haya.
The verb is haya. And he tells you that's the basis of my name. And it's haya. And you can't figure out, therefore, that it's Yahweh. It's not difficult.
It's a mystery.
It's just not difficult. It's obvious. And so this is another example of religious Jews, particularly the leaders of Judaism, rabbis, of deliberately and knowingly lying to their brethren. Why would they do that about something this important? Because if Jews had not denied Yahweh's name, there would have been no Christianity and no Islam.
Right.
Those denying Yahweh's name made it possible for those 2 religions that have been so hellacious against Jews possible. There's no Allah, and there is no Jesus Christ. Had Jews just maintained knowledge and spoke about Yahweh. So here's the first statement. Then Yahweh declared the word to Moshe exclusively during the 10th of the 7th month is the day of reconciliations. This exists as a set-apart and special invitation to be called out and meet for you all to approach. Kipurym. It is from Kipur, and Kipur is from the verb kaphar, which means to make reconciliation by purging and covering. Pardons and forgiveness is what it speaks of. Any words in that you'd like to expound on based on the letters, Kirk or Dee, or we're going to move on to Yahweh's next statement?
Well, they're all very simple letters, and they all mean exactly what you see there. A kaphar, for instance, it has a hand that increases by words, and a roach, but those who are or shamaring, or for lack of, I know it's not ing in there, but those who are listening, shamar, concentrate on, carefully consider Yah's words. So even the letters in the simplest form of symbolism tells you the same story, but lexicons, you cannot, I didn't find anything, if people question your translations, and I've been doing this now for 16 years, you ain't reading the same lexicon as I am. It says but
it's not just the lexicons, but once they found the that lead tablet, and it was scribed with the Paleo-Hebrew letters, carrying the message dated to the time of the conclusion of the Exodus. At that point, it became game over for anyone to question the proper rendering of Hebrew words, because you can go to the original letters. The kaf, for example, is the palm of an open hand. Mm-hmm. This is someone trying to reach out to you, trying to offer you something. Mm-hmm. It's a marvelous symbol. It's a greeting. So it's a welcoming, a greeting, an offer of something valuable, and an open hand to lift you up. The pay is a mouth. No. Where words come from. This is when Yahweh said he spoke to Moshe. His words. Mm-hmm. The Rosh.
I love that.
Is an individual with eyes and an ears and a mind that is observant, who is listening to Yahweh, and is able to understand what God is saying. Kipur.
Now, add one more thing, though. You go to Kaphar, and then you put the Towrah at the end, which is the signpost along the way, telling you what the action is. Not only are they looking at, but they're looking at something very specific, the roadway home, and all that comes with that. So it's pretty phenomenal stuff to me. I mean, I never get tired of it.
So if we look at the timing here, this is the 7th month, is the time of promise. In Hebrew, the zain, which is the plow, is the symbol for 7. It speaks of creating a division, a separation, of preparing the soil, of making it receptive to new growth. Literally drawing a line in the sand is the zain. And this is the 10th day of that 7th month. 10 just happens to be the Yod, which is Yahweh's arm reaching down and out to us with an open hand. These are very clear symbols of what God's trying to communicate. Kipur is used 8 times, always in the plural form as Kipurym. It is based upon the verbal root kaphar, which is to make reconciliation by purging and covering. This indicates that by purging us of the residue of religious corruption, we are cleansed of its stain and stigma. Then we can be covered in Yahweh's light, coming to appear perfect in God's eyes. And of course, because of what Dowd did on matzah, for those who have accepted this, he carried away our guilt. Carried it into Sheol, where he left it, which means it's invisible. And if there is no guilt, we are perfect in God's eyes. God's next statement reads as follows. When Moshe, this is actually from Bob Midbar, I should say, as opposed to following in that same line of thinking. But what I wanted to here is to say that there is another way to help us better understand what Kipurym means and how it's related to Kipporeth. We were talking about the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant. Well, it is Kipporeth, based on exactly this same verb. So it reads, when Moshe went into the radiant tent, the Ohel, of the eternal witness to the restoring appointments, that is Moed, to speak with Yahweh, the voice speaking to him from above, the Kipporeth, the mercy seat, which was beneficially associated with the ark of the enduring and restoring testimony, for the purpose of making connections to understand the 2 cherubim speaking with him. So the reason I took that little detour from God's explanation of Yom Kipurym is that the operative phrase, beyond, of course, Mikra, is what does kaphar, and therefore Kipurym, mean? Mm-hmm. And the moment you identify it with the Kipporeth, which is based on the same verb, which is the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant, which God associates by saying, this is the central focus of this day. So this day is observed by anointing that mercy seat, the Kipurym. And if it is a mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant, then it's for damn sure that Yom Kippur, to use the religious term, cannot be a day of affliction. One does not afflict those that they are giving mercy to.
Nice.
So that connection is extremely important. And by the way, this time Yahweh is associating it with Moed. Moed is again one of these compound words with ma meaning to contemplate the implications of ed. And ed in Hebrew means eternal, witness, testimony, and to restore. So it is the eternal witness to the restoring testimony.
Wow.
He also, for a little identification here, when Moshe went into the tent of the eternal witness and restoring testimony to speak with Yahweh, the voice that addressed him came from above the Kipur, the mercy seat, which is exactly what's going to happen on the fulfillment of Yom Kipurym in year 6000 Yad on the 120th Yobel when he returns with Dowd, is that he's going to return above the mercy seat because all of those who are there to greet him on this day will be received, and they will receive great compassion and love. All right, now that we know what Yom Kipurym means, this is the next thing that God had to say about it. Then Yahweh declared the word to Moshe, saying, exclusively, during the 10th of the 7th month is the day of reconciliations. This exists as a set-apart and special invitation to be called out and meet. Then your soul, your consciousness, should respond and appear before the feminine manifestation of the fiery light to approach Yahweh. Now, that's not how it reads if you were to look it up in a JPS. They don't translate nephesh as soul. They would say, then your person or a person. But that's not what nephesh means. God has lots of words for man, woman, individual, mortal person. I mean, there's like 5 different words for man. Nephesh is soul. It speaks of consciousness. That's your ability to observe what's around you and respond appropriately. All animals have a nephesh. The nephesh is the only part of us that's capable of being eternal. So the nephesh can be destroyed if you do not know God. It can be sent to Sheol if you lead people away from God, or it can spend an eternity in Shamayim, in the spiritual realm, with God. And so it is your soul that matters at this moment. Your physical body is meaningless. Then your soul should respond. Anah is one of the more interesting Hebrew words. The religious will translate Anah, then you should afflict. And while Anah can be rendered afflict, abase, humiliate, humble, and it does have in some of the Moed an interesting insight that it provides. 90+% of the time that Anah is used in the text of the Torah, prophets, and Psalms, it means to reply, to answer, or to respond.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, it's exceedingly easy to figure out which one of those. God just said this was a mikra, which means it's an invitation. Right. What do you do when somebody hands you an invitation to an event that is designed to be merciful for your soul? Do you abuse that individual? Do you go into affliction mode? Or do you simply respond and say, thank you, I'll be there. You invited me to a party. You've thrown this party for my benefit, and all you're asking me to do is Anah. Respond. And so there's no one that studies the Hebrew text that doesn't know that that's the primary meaning of Anah, that it's used throughout the Moed Mikra because they're all invitations to meet with God, to be called out.
Yes.
And so with an invitation, you RSVP. You reply. You answer it. You respond to it, well, if you want your soul to live. Now, the next word, qarab. Qarab is an exceedingly easy word in Hebrew to translate. It's just like Anah. Anah means to reply, to answer, to respond. Take 5 minutes and look it up online. It's not difficult. Qarab is another exceedingly easy term. It means to appear before, to draw close, to come near. That's all it means. It doesn't mean to offer a present. It doesn't mean to offer a gift. It doesn't mean to do anything other than to draw near. So why would somebody knowingly misrepresent those two words? On this day that Yahweh says He is inviting us to attend something that is specifically designed, associated with the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant. It's tragic.
Yes.
And it's deliberate. All right, so the next word, Isha. Now, I'm going to tell you, Isha is not particularly easy, although it shouldn't be all that difficult. Isha is somehow rendered in most translations burnt offering. But that's not what these words mean. Isha means female individual, or it means fiery light. But Ish is the masculine version of fiery light. So when Yahweh appeared on the top of Mount Towrah, when he first appeared before Moshe, when you have this column of fire during the night, the word that Yahweh uses is Ish, means fire. But as in most words in Hebrew, there's a masculine and feminine variation of them, and Isha is feminine fire, feminine light. And just as Ish is man, person, individual, masculine, Isha is person, feminine, woman. So with Isha, Ishe, you have two options. Both require a feminine perspective. So it's either a feminine manifestation of a fiery light, or it's a feminine individual, as in that is Isha. And to render it any other way would be inappropriate. La is to approach and draw near. Yahweh is God's one and only name. So this exists as a special invitation to be called out and meet, for you to approach. Then your soul should respond Anah, and appear before qarab, Isha, the feminine manifestation of the fiery light, to approach Yahweh. Now, there are so many options as to what Isha means, and heretofore I've always presented Isha, because of what God says next, is the set-apart spirit. She is Yahweh's feminine side. She is the mother to the father. She has all maternal responsibilities, and Ruach is a feminine noun. But there is another possibility, and that is that Dowd, who is the one who made the sacrifices that enable us to be part of the covenant family, is routinely stated by Yahweh that he is going to come back as light.
Right. Yeah.
But then you say, wait a minute, he's a dude, and this is Isha. Now, maybe you want to look up Nefesh in your Hebrew lexicon. Is Nefesh masculine or feminine?
Feminine.
Feminine, right? So it's interesting. When Dowd speaks of his involvement fulfilling the moed, he always leaves out masculine. So he'll speak, it's either first person singular, no reference to gender, or he will he often speaks of himself in third person as well. Again, the giveaway is always, when he's speaking of his role fulfilling the mikra, he always leaves out the gender, or he specifically states that it will be his soul. Because he's a dude, man, but yet his soul is feminine. And since Dowd fulfilled matzah and Pesach that make it possible for us to enjoy reconciliations, Kipur, he's coming back as with his soul. And it is his soul that is imbued with light. And so this can very much be Dowd's soul.
It makes sense to me.
So either of those are possibilities. It doesn't say offer a gift or a burnt offering or anything of that nature. Those things are not shared. Go ahead, Dee.
It's just interesting when you say that. It talks about appearing before the feminine manifestation to approach Yahweh, and Dowd facilitates our approach, 100%.
Without Dowd, none of us can approach God. For us to be called out of this world and be invited into Yahweh's covenant family, we have to be beneficiaries of Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim, and ultimately Shabuah, because you'll have to be enriched and empowered to survive in God's presence and to be a contributor in God's presence. So you have to become immortal, Pesach. You have to become perfected, Matzah. You have to be adopted, Bikurim. Then you have to be enriched and empowered, liberated in time, emancipated as well, Shabuah. So it's an essential aspect of this. When Yahweh said, there's 5 conditions of the covenant, and the second one is after you walk away from Babel, your country and your religion, the family of man and human customs, he says, walk to me and become perfect. Become perfected. Well, that's the entire process of Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim. That's why it's such a tragedy that in Judaism, Matzah is omitted. Because that's the day that we are perfected so that we can enter God's company. This is the path to do that. And Dowd is the one who provided it. And Dowd did this for a whole lot of reasons, but one of them is he knew that shepherding Jews is a tough job. And you don't get better than Moshe, and he couldn't do it. I mean, they turned on him every which way.
Yeah, that's true.
And you just don't get better than Moshe. And so Dowd recognized that to earn these people's respect, you're going to have to do something extraordinary. Saving them from being slaves in Egypt wasn't enough. So saving them from themselves, that's a tall order, and that's what Dowd did. So this is about coming into the presence of Dowd's soul through the set-apart spirit, the Ruach Kodesh. And by the way, at this point, the Ruach Kodesh, the set-apart spirit, and Dowd's nefesh are going to be essentially inseparable. Yahweh says that the Ruach Kodesh came upon Dowd and never left him. It came upon him in a very robust way, which is part of what makes him. So this is a very clear presentation of what God intends for this day. And again, amazing that people would choose to mess this up. This is what he says next. To fully, this actually is something that I wanted to share just as it relates to Isha, because Isha is an important term to figure out it. And this whole idea that we're talking about here, how did we go about rendering these words so that we understand specifically what God is asking? This statement of Isha in Shemot 29, that'd be Exodus 29:18, is really quite telling. It says, kaphar, burn. The entire lamb, the AL, on the altar. It rises up toward Yahweh as the spirit of soothing acceptance, riach.
Yeah.
The maternal manifestation of the fiery light, Isha, serves as a counselor, reconciling you so that you are acceptable to approach Yahweh. That's a pretty clear understanding of what Isha is in this context. You got the fire, you got the lamb, you got this spiritual acceptance, and it's that maternal manifestation of the fiery light that provides this counseling, this reconciling acceptance. To approach Yahweh. It's one of the ways that we've gone about translating the Torah, prophets, and Psalms for the 30 volumes that comprise now the Yada Yahowah series, is that almost all nouns in Hebrew have a verbal root. And the actionable component of those words, and really in every ancient language, will define those words. And so we look at the verbs and what the verbs mean, and we'll also look at what the letters convey of those words, since they were all very graphic in the pictures that they painted. But the other thing we'll do is, how does God use these words? And is there a way to have a consistent application of these words, recognizing that sometimes the words are like Anah? Because Anah is a really interesting term, and it's used even in Pesach and Matzah, where Dowd allowed his body, his basar, and his nefesh, soul, to be afflicted so that we could answer this invitation and not have our souls afflicted. So there are words like this that have a dark and light side that paint a more complete picture of what God is saying. And so you look at how God's used the term in the past, and it will direct us to translate it more effectively. Yes. And then the other thing that we'll typically do is that if you really want to understand what God said, that one of the first things you have to do is get rid of the implications of the diacritical markings that were added in the 10th and 11th centuries, because there was never any need for them. The 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet, 5 of them are vowels, so you don't need diacritical markings to know how to pronounce the words. That's why in modern Hebrew there are no diacritical markings. They are superfluous. There are 5 vowels and 17 consonants among the 22 letters, and so each can be pronounced. But you have to look past the diacritical markings and look at each word that's written with those same letters, and then also understand when there's a compound being used, like bikra, by ponder the implications of qarab. So there's lots of techniques that help you do this. So then reading from Qarab, Leviticus 23:27, it reads, by the way, Qarab should be a first clue, so the Mikra are presented in a book named Qarab. Then Yahweh declared the word to Moshe, saying exclusively during the 10th of the 7th month, and I'm repeating this because context is important, the day of reconciliations. This exists as a set-apart and special invitation to be called out and meet, for you to approach. Then your soul should respond and appear before the feminine manifestation of the fiery light to approach Yahweh. So, God says, do not perform any of the service of the spiritual messenger, malaka, of the duties of the heavenly representative, the spiritual counselor, and the maternal envoy. So this is a very adroit tie-in to what we just read about the Isha during this life-sustaining and essential day. So Kipurym gets the same STEM designation that matzah gets, essential, life-sustaining day. Indeed, the day of reconciliations, Yowm Kipurym, is to make amends, to pardon, and to forgive, reconciling the relationship, kaphar. Now, if someone would say, well, I'm not sure that kaphar is the verb that explains Kipurym, well, then your argument is with God, because that's what he just said. For you all, before the appearance and the presence, la paneh, of Yahweh, your God. Yahweh has not appeared to any more than one at a time, Yahuwdym or Yisra'elite, since the early part of the Exodus, when Yahuwdym said, don't ever do that again. We don't want to see your fiery light. We don't want to hear your voice. Speak to us through Moshe, because, we just don't want to be intimidated this way. You're too loud, you're too flashy, too bright. I don't know what the deal is. Or they were too corrupt and just didn't like having Yahweh see them as they were. But nonetheless, they said nope, and that was it. God revealed himself to certain individuals. Moshe clearly saw him one-on-one, spent time with him one-on-one. Dowd did, Yahshua did, Shamuel did. A number of people have had that opportunity. We have as well, and so do you. You can see Yahweh most clearly when you read his testimony, and you do so with an open mind, and you examine the words that he conveyed to paint a picture of himself. He is more clearly represented in his words than in any other place or way. So you have the same opportunity. So here is God adding some thoughts to what he said. So do not perform any of the service of the spiritual messenger, the malaka. So why did we come up with that when the Hebrew text would say, don't do any ordinary work? Well, Asha, one of the most common Hebrew verbs, means to engage, to act, to work. It is to perform. And malak here is, which would be the root before it turns feminine. Malaka is the feminine version of malak. But a malak is also a very common Hebrew word. It's a messenger, a counselor, an envoy, a representative. They are spiritual beings, the malak. So this says, do not perform any of the, and it would be malak, service of the spiritual messenger, but feminine. So this is a maternal envoy. So we're still dealing with this influence of the Isha, this feminine influence on this day. And then God calls this day a stem. It's essential. Mm-hmm. Part of your backbone, which the religious need one. The day of reconciliation, Yowm Kipurym, is kaphar. It's a day to make amends. It's a day to forgive, a day to reconcile the relationship, to release from guilt. This is the 7th of 7 opportunities that Yahweh has offered to resolve the conflict of religion and politics that have separated him from his people. It is for you all, al atem, the plural of you, before the appearance and in the presence of Yahweh. This is the day that Yahweh returns. He has not been seen by his people, with the rare exceptions of those people I named, for now 3,450 years. That's a long time. But Yom Kipurym is about the day that Yahweh appears, and you can be in his presence. So do you think that God wants to afflict his children? That he wants to abase them on the day that he is returning? Is your God satanic? Is your God demonic? Is your God like a rabbi? This is the day of forgiveness. This is the day of ransoming and reconciling, of liberating before the presence of Yahweh. I don't see anything here that would tell me that we should be afflicting ourselves and that twirling chickens is the right way to address this time.
Certainly not.
Truthfully, any soul, ha nefesh. So it's key, indeed, surely, actual, emphasizing this point. Kol, any, every. Nefesh, soul. Asher, which by association does not answer and respond. La Anah, does not reply, making a declaration. During this life-sustaining and essential estem day, Yom, that soul shall be cut off and either eliminated or separated from being with its family. So there you are. If you're not going to be among those who are going to be celebrating this day, this is the last opportunity to reconcile your relationship with Yahweh and spend eternity with him in Shamayim as part of his family. And God's making it really clear. The soul that doesn't respond to this day as he has articulated it, not as the religious have convoluted it,
right,
that they will be cut off, separated, severed, karat. And in this case, it is qarab, from being with the family. Well, there are only two ways to be qarab from the God's people. One is to be separated, and the other is to be cut off, uprooted, become lifeless. And those are the two options. You know, there's three options for human souls. They either are cut down to nothing, uprooted such they shrivel up and cease to exist. They are separated, which means they go to the place of separation, which is Sheol, which is an eternal penalty. That's for having misled God's people. Or they are cut into the relationship, like you would cut an agreement in business, and they spend eternity with Yahweh. But in this particular case, Yahweh says, if you don't avail yourself of this reconciling event that I've provided for you, then there is no hope for you. There's only bad options. So God's not condemning anyone here.
Right.
God is just saying, it's up to you. I have issued you an invitation. My son allowed his corporeal body to be tormented and mutilated to fulfill Pesach, to give you life. He volunteered to have his nephesh soul carry your guilt into Sheol and to deposit it there and spent matzah in Sheol. But if you're not going to capitalize on these invitations to have your soul perfected, and you're not going to attend the day of reconciliation, you don't want to say my name, you don't want to acknowledge that my son Dowd did this for you, that's your choice. But understand, you're not going to spend any time with us. You're done. That's the answer. God is giving you a wonderful gift, he and his son. You can accept it and be appreciative and acknowledge what they have done, capitalize on it, or you can do what religious Jews have done for thousands of years, which is to reject what God is offering and antagonize him. Those are your options. You now know the consequence of those choices. Would you like to add anything to that? Because that's pretty stark.
No, it's unfathomable to me. Of course, I've had 16 years of this, so yeah, it's different.
It's an easy choice for me to make.
Mm-hmm.
And any soul, which by association continually attempts to perform any part of the work of the malaka, the spiritual counselor and maternal messenger, on this life-sustaining and essential day, that specific and individual soul I will eliminate such that it ceases to exist from being around the family, striving against the community of living souls. This is Kara called out, Leviticus 23:30. God's pretty serious about the malaka. Malaka has a role, and it isn't ours. You know, I know what my role is. My role is to serve as a herald to Dowd's return and as a witness to Yahweh's prophetic testimony so that his people come to know who he is, what he's offering, and what he expects in return, so that they understand the purpose of each of the 7 Moed Mikra, they understand the 5 conditions of the covenant, so that they know that it is in their interest to jettison the relationship with a political party or a religious cult. That's my job. I'm not here to save anybody. I'm not going to do the work that Dowd did with his soul. I'm not going to do the work of the set-apart spirit. That's not my job. I couldn't do it if I wanted to do it, and I don't want to do it.
Right.
They already did it. My job is to tell you about it. But, you know, a rabbi will claim, you know, they can give you all sorts of blessings. You can go pay a rabbi, and he will provide a blessing for you. God says, you know, if you're going to play that game, if you're going to pretend that you're the one that is offering this benefit, this blessing, if you're the one who has done what was required to reconcile this relationship, the hell with you. Because I can assure you, you weren't there to do it. Your relationship with me can be reconciled because of what we have done, and we would include Yahweh, the Ruach Kodesh, and Dowd. And so we can't claim anything other than this is what God said. You'd be wise to take advantage of it. This is what he said. This is what it means. This is how you should respond. So we know our role, and we know what we should not be doing. We're not like the priest at the confessional. We don't forgive anybody. Oh, I hear religious people say all the time, well, I forgive them. Well, no, you don't.
So what?
Yeah. You have no ability to forgive.
Above the pay
What are you
grade.
talking about? Yeah, I mean, I can't forgive someone. It's not. That's Yahweh and Dowd and the set-apart spirit working together through the Moed Mikre. This is how that happens. So if you want to take advantage of it, they've made this offer to you. Our role is simply to tell you about it and to tell you what things get in the way of people understanding these things and capitalizing upon them. Do not consistently or habitually attempt to perform the work pertaining to anything associated with the malaka. This is an eternal and everlasting olam, clearly communicated and inscribed prescription for living, chukah, throughout your generations in every situation and dwelling place, throughout all time. Doesn't sound like God's going to say, no, this only matters until the temple is gone. Then you can change it. Write up a whole workaround in the Talmud. No, that's not what it says. It certainly doesn't say until Jesus comes. And then he can renege on all of it.
Yeah.
No. It doesn't say until the pedophile that is a covetous, warmongering terrorist embarrasses himself by claiming that he's the messenger of God. No, that's not what it says. It says forever. This is something that Yahweh has scribed and communicated to us as a prescription for living forever. Don't think that means he's going to change his mind, does it?
No.
It is for you a Shabbaton, an empowering and enriching expression of everything associated with the promise of 7. A Shabbat observance, a 7th day to celebrate with God. And so your soul should reply by answering the summons and making a declaration. During the 9th of the month, in the evening, from sundown until sunset, you should consistently observe, closely examine, and carefully consider your association with the Shabbat. So this is all leading up to this day. God's saying, listen, this is the last opportunity. There are no more tomorrows. So perhaps before I return with Dowd, you ought to take some time out and focus on what I'm saying here. Maybe this would be a really good time to make sure you know the right answer. Because if you get this wrong, it's over. Now, there is this myth in religious Judaism that the Shabbat is a day to do nothing. It's a day to impose about 1,000 laws as to how you have to do nothing to make it the least productive and least valuable and most onerous day of the week. Now, they have turned the Shabbat into torture.
Oh, yeah.
But Yahweh speaks of the Shabbat as something that he celebrates. Shabbat is a verb.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a time of celebrating the relationship. It's a time of celebrating all of the beautiful things that surround us in life. It's a time to celebrate days like Kipurym, where we have this association of the seven and God's promise in the seventh month and everything that pertains to seven, because we're at the cusp of beginning the seventh millennia of human existence. And so God said, this is the Shabbaton, which means to celebrate everything associated with the expression of seven and the promise of the Shabbat. It's a Shabbat observance, a seventh day to celebrate with God. And so your souls should respond, should reply, should Anah, make a declaration. During the 9th of the month, the day before, in the evening, from sundown to sunset, you should be very, very observant, closely examining and carefully considering your association with the Shabbat. Are you going to be there during the millennial celebration of Shabbat? Now, Sukkah will be celebrated as the seventh day for 1,000 years. Are you going to be there? Are you going to capitalize on this Shabbaton, on this invitation to be called out and be with God? And that's what he's asking. I think it's a pretty good place for us to say, as we're down to our final 30 seconds of the broadcast portion of this program. We still have the archives that will follow. But what a marvelous conclusion. Then this is God's announcement regarding this day. This is it. This is the last of the second chances, if you will. Where God says on this, the ninth day, you better come to understand what's going on. Now, I want to speak a little bit about what God has in store for this day, because that's presented in the 31st chapter of Yirma'yah. Matter of fact, most of the prophet Zechariah focuses on this particular day as well. And Yeshayah, Isaiah, has an enormous amount of material telling us about this particular day. Yowm Kipurym is one of those days that if you mind everything that God has to say to us and examine this wonderful treasure, you could write an entire volume just on Yowm Kipurym. I think that the Moedim volume of the Yada Yahowah series is just Yowm Kipurym and Sukkah, and Yom Kipur Kipurym takes up 3/4 of the book, and I think it's like 750 pages, and I am certain that I did not cover it all. So this is a day Yahweh has a lot to say about. So I just want to, in the time that we're still recording, even though we're no longer broadcasting, to talk about what God said is going to occur this day. It's in Yirma'yah 31. And he says the first thing that you should know is this day is for Yisra'el and Yahuwdym. Now, there will be some gowym that will be there, celebrating Dowd's return with Yahweh. But this day is to reconcile the relationship between Yisra'el and Yahuwdym. That split occurred during Solomon's time, or immediately after Solomon, Dowd's son. So the split has been ongoing for 3,000 years, and ultimately Yisra'el was hauled away into slavery by the Assyrians, and then Yahuwdym was savagely hauled into slavery by the Babylonians. And while the nation is called Yisra'el, Israel today, the Yisraelites themselves have been separated from the land for a very long time. And they've been separated from one another. Yisra'el and Yahuwdym were at war with each other. Dowd reconciled the relationship, defended the people, established the country. And from that time, it has really been a very fast trip downhill. So God says that this day is about reconciliation of that relationship and of reconciling the relationship with Him. Then He says that on this day, He's going to reaffirm, He's going to reestablish His Bereth covenant. Bereth is always singular. It is a family-oriented relationship. And God says He's going to reestablish that relationship on this day. Kodesh is the term that He uses, and it does not mean that He is going to create a new covenant. It doesn't say that at all. He's going to reaffirm the covenant, restore the covenant. And this becomes particularly evident because He says that affirmation of the covenant on this day, on Yowm Kipurym, isn't going to be identical to the affirmation of the covenant with Abraham and the forefathers. And the reason is that up to this point, Yahweh's had to have the Torah, His guidance, be something that we could choose to accept and observe or ignore.
Mm.
The covenant would have been up to this point something we could choose to participate in or reject. Yahweh up to this point has been a name and a God that we could choose to embrace and celebrate, disassociate with. But that is no longer the case. At this point, 100% of those who will be reconciled on Yom Kipurym are going to be family, eternally part of the covenant. So God says that the strong hand that He used to withdraw the children of Yisra'el from Egypt is not the way that He's going to approach Yom Kipurym. During the Exodus, the Yatza from Egypt, children of Yisra'el didn't know Yahweh. They saw the fiery light, they heard His voice, they saw the miracles that He performed, but they didn't know it. And quite frankly, they were irascible. And so God said, I made a promise to Abraham, I'm going to liberate them from here, plus the fact I'm going to reveal myself to this group of people. We're going to go through this entire process together. And so I have to drag them, kicking and screaming, back to Yisra'el. And so He said, I did it with a firm hand. I didn't give him any option. At this point, I had to do what I had to do, otherwise it would have been over. There would have been no Yisra'el. Right. So that was with a firm hand. At this point now, He's just dad. He is father. Dowd is brother. We're family. You don't use a firm hand anymore. And now the Torah doesn't have to be this thing that's out there that you can choose to accept or reject. God now can literally incorporate His teaching and guidance into the very fabric of our lives. So that as we grow between 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 dimensions, we can handle what we're going to experience. I'm going to tell you that if you were to take us the way we are into the 4th dimension, we wouldn't survive for a nanosecond. It would be so, the options would be so great. The whole fathom of this dimension would be so astounding. The noise, the energy, all of it would fry our brains. We could not survive it for a second. And so God has to give us the kind of guidance that says, this is how you deal with the 4th dimension. This is how you can expand a moment to 1,000,000 years. You can contract 1,000,000 years down to a moment. You can travel from one side of the universe to the other in no time. These are marvelous things. You can transform some of your spiritual energy into a physical existence when you want to feel the warmth of a sun, of some star on your face, to walk in a stream, to sing a song, to enjoy a good meal, to express time and a linear flow. And then you can transform yourself back into energy, E equals mc squared, and have all of the advantages that it provides. So God, for us to be able to handle that, has to be able to imbue his guidance inside of us so that we're capable of expressing free will in a way that's not harmful to ourselves and others, and so that we can get the most out of the opportunities we'll be given. So at this time, he can do what he couldn't do back then. First of all, there is no firm hand. Now it's only a kaf, a loving hand. And second, the Torah is no longer something that we can choose to accept or reject, because we've all accepted it. We want it and everything it offers to be part of our lives. And it's going to be a very different Torah. And the reason it'll be very different is the Torah as it currently exists has lots of very hurtful things in it. The waters of miracle. Building the golden calf right after Yahweh liberates them from Egypt. Even the slavery in Egypt. There's a lot of sad stories in it, and we don't want to be reminiscing of the heartache that we have caused our God. And you're not going to need to have this warning that says, if you don't pay attention to what I'm offering here on Yowm Kipurym, then you're severed. Because at this point, we're all family. We'll be family forever. So what God has to offer us by way of Torah, teaching, guidance, instruction, directions, is how we make the most of our lives together in eternity. So we will be a same God, same relationship, same truths, but now it's all positive. A very different kind of communication. And he makes it very clear. He says that once we do that, then there's not going to be any corruption going forward. This is going to be a return to Eden, where we come back to the Garden of Great Joy, and we enjoy being together, camping out with our Father. That is what this day represents.
Sign me up.
Yep, sign me up. Yeah, I accepted the invitation and extending one to all who are listening. First to Yisra'el, to Yahuwdym, but also to gowym who want to be part of God's family. It is the ultimate offer. God is asking very little of us in return. There are 5 conditions of the covenant, all of which are benefits to us. There are 5 benefits of the covenant. And there are 7 moed mikra, each of which are important for us to observe, to celebrate, to capitalize upon. And there is none of them that is called Rosh Hashanah. There is none of them that is called Purim. There's none of them that is called a high holy day. There's none of them that is designed for affliction. There is, it's a very clear presentation of Pesach as part of Chag Matzah. Pesach is 1 day. Matzah is 7. So it's understanding what God is offering through these 7 moed mikra. Each of the 7 moed provide a particular benefit. They're all fulfilled by Dowd. So it's celebrating what the Son of God has provided for us, capitalizing on it, attending those invitations while accepting the terms and conditions of the covenant, celebrating Yahweh's name, and that's what brings us home.
Lovely.
So that is God's story.
Yeah.
That is Kipurym. I think next week we'll talk about Sukkah. It will have, I guess it will be as we celebrate our show next week. So it's a wonderful time for us to talk about what Sukkah means. But as a teaser for that event, God's story comes full circle. His relationship with humankind begins in the garden of great joy, Gan Eden. Its Sukkah is a harbinger of us returning to that idyllic state. The earth is going to be transformed in the conditions that are presented, having taken place in Eden. No religion, no politics, no caste economic schemes, no strangers, direct personal relationship with Yahweh, the opportunity to live in a joyous, perfect state. No corruption, no pollution, no aggravation of any kind, and yet total and complete communication and excitement. So Sukkah is about returning to Gan Eden. It's just that now the garden, well, it's enormous. It's not only initially the entire land of Yisra'el, and then the entire planet Earth, and then this entire solar system, our entire galaxy, and then the universe becomes our Eden. So that's what God's offering. Sounds like a pretty good deal to me.
Yeah,
I agree. Sign me up.
Sign me up.
I'm
And between, and understand that we are on this day 10 years exactly from this occurring. So there is a lot that's going to happen over these next 10 years. And a lot of it's not going to be fun. But boy, I'll tell you what, 10 years to the day is going to be the ultimate celebration of life. As we have the opportunity to watch Yahweh return with Dowd and celebrate our family relationship forevermore.
Wow.
Well, thank you. Good night, everyone. Happy Shabat. Look forward to being with you next week as we celebrate Sukkah and continue to talk about our relationship with Yahweh. And good night.
Good night, Yom.
Good night, Kirk.
Night, Dee.